Every power structure built since the first city was razed from the earth. Every dynasty, every military chain of command, every financial empire, every social hierarchy from the emperor who gives orders to the slave who receives them, collapses under the sixth seal of Revelation 6, and the people who constructed those structures choose burial under stone over standing before the face of the one who sits on the throne. That is what the sixth seal delivers. And the seventh seal that follows it does not release more destruction. It releases something the entire series has been building toward, something no one watching the sky collapse would predict. 30 minutes of silence. And that silence is the architecture of the answer to every prayer you have ever prayed that seemed to go nowhere. Before we go any further, if this kind of deep biblical study is what you have been waiting for, subscribe to this channel right now. We are closing out the Seven Seals series with what the text actually says, not the version you have heard before. You do not want to miss what this episode reveals about prayer. The sixth seal is not the first time the Bible uses the language of a collapsing sky. That is the detail most teachers of Revelation skip over, and it is the key that unlocks what the sixth seal is actually communicating. When John writes about the sun going dark, the moon turning to blood, the stars falling from the sky, and the sky itself being rolled up, he is not writing science fiction. He is writing in a literary tradition that goes back centuries before Revelation, a tradition every first-century Jewish reader would have recognized immediately because they had grown up hearing it in the synagogue. Isaiah chapter 13 is not about the end of the world. It is a prophecy against the city of Babylon, a human empire, a political and economic power center. And Isaiah 13:10 describes its fall with these words, "For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine." Sun darkened, moon without light, stars refusing to shine. The same language John uses in Revelation 6. Isaiah was describing the collapse of Babylon, not a literal astronomical catastrophe, but the dissolution of a power that organized the world around itself. This is the decreation framework, a literary and theological tradition in the Hebrew Scriptures in which the collapse of a human empire is described using the language of creation being undone. Genesis 1 established the world through a series of steps. Light on day 1, the sun and moon and stars on day 4, dry land on day 3, the stable ordering of the cosmos. The prophets of Israel used the reversal of that sequence, sun darkened, moon failing, stars falling, sky rolled back, ground shaking, as the language for what happens when God dismantles a power structure that has set itself against him. John is using that exact language in Revelation 6. The first cosmic sign of the sixth seal is the earthquake. Revelation 6:12 opens with seismos megas, a great earthquake. The word megas matters. The New Testament uses seismos for ordinary earthquakes, but when megas is added, great earthquake, it marks a scale that the text is specifically distinguishing from local seismic activity. Matthew 27:51 uses seismos at the moment of the crucifixion, when the temple veil tore. Revelation 11:13 and 16:18 use seismos for specific prophetic interventions. In prophetic language, the earthquake is not the news of the day. It is the signal that the foundation of what was built is being addressed at the level of its foundation. The sun becomes black as sackcloth of goat hair, sakkos trichinos. Sackcloth in the ancient world was not merely dark fabric. It was the specific clothing of mourning, worn at funerals, worn in seasons of communal grief, worn when catastrophe had arrived, and the response was visible lamentation. Isaiah 53 is not from Revelation. It is from the prophet writing centuries earlier. "I clothe the heavens with darkness and make sackcloth their covering." When the sun wears sackcloth in the sixth seal, it is the cosmos itself in mourning. Creation is not collapsing, it is lamenting. Something is being lost that creation itself is marking with grief. The moon becomes like blood. Joel 2:31. The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. When the Apostle Peter stood up in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost and quoted this passage from Joel 2, he was not saying, "Watch for an eclipse." He was saying this prophetic language, the language of the sun darkening and the moon turning to blood, was the grammar of divine action breaking into history. The sixth seal uses moon as blood language in the same tradition, not as a literal prediction of a lunar event, but as the ancient prophetic signal. The day of the Lord is arriving in its completeness. If you're watching this and carrying something, a situation that has not resolved, a prayer that has lasted longer than you expected, type this below: Jesus, I trust you. Not because the situation is finished, because what we are about to see in this series finale is the theology of what happens to prayers that go unanswered. Type it as a declaration, because the architecture of trust is what this episode is built on. Stars fall to the earth as late figs fall from a fig tree shaken by a strong wind. Isaiah 34:4. This time the judgment target is Edom. All the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled up like a scroll. All their host shall fall as leaves fall from the vine, like leaves falling from the fig tree. John did not invent the image of stars falling like figs. Isaiah 34 used it for Edom, and the collapse of Edom in Isaiah's prophecy was the collapse of a power structure that had stood in opposition to God's purposes. The sixth seal's stars falling as figs is the same language, scaled from a nation to the entire world system. The sky recedes like a scroll being rolled up, Vivlion elisomenon. This image is the most theologically charged element of the sixth seal. A scroll is not a natural phenomenon. A scroll is something authored, something written deliberately by someone with intent and message. When the sky is described as rolling up like a scroll, the text is making a statement about what the sky is, a document. It has an author, and the author is engaged in the act of rolling it up, which means the writing it carried is complete, and the document is being retired. The creation that provided the framework for everything human civilization has built is being closed by the one who opened it. A scroll in the ancient world was not a passive object. It was a legal instrument, a testament, a contract, a covenant. Roman law required wills to be sealed with exactly 7 witnesses, which is why the scroll in Revelation 5 has 7 seals. When the sky is described as a scroll being rolled up, John is giving the physical creation a legal identity. It is a document. It has an author, and the author is the same one whose court the kings are now fleeing. The creation that provided the arena for every empire, every dynasty, every civilization is not just ending. It is being formally concluded by the one whose signature it has always carried. Every mountain and every island is moved from its place. Mountains in biblical geography are not merely geological features. From Mount Sinai, where the covenant was given, to Mount Zion, where God declared he had placed his king, to the high places where Baal was worshipped, and where Isaiah declared that in the last days the mountain of the Lord's house would be established above all mountains. Mountains in the prophetic tradition are the seats of power and the locations of encounter with the divine. When every mountain is moved, every seat of human and spiritual authority is simultaneously displaced. Nothing that has anchored power in this world keeps its position. Ezekiel 32 verses 7 and 8 are a prophecy against Egypt. I will cover the heavens and make their stars dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give its light. All the bright lights of heaven I will make dark over you, and put darkness on your land. This is written to Egypt, not to the end of the world, but to a specific empire in a specific century. Amos 8:9 uses the same language for the judgment of Israel itself. I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight. The cosmic sign language appears across Isaiah, Ezekiel, Joel, Amos, each time describing the fall of a specific power center, not the end of the universe. The pattern is consistent enough that Luke 21:25-26, Jesus, speaking on the Mount of Olives, uses the same language. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. People will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. When Jesus says this on the Mount of Olives, he is speaking in the prophetic tradition of the cosmic sign language, describing what the dissolution of the world system looks like. John in Revelation 6 is standing inside the same tradition. The sixth seal is the completion of what Isaiah, Ezekiel, Joel, Amos, and Jesus were all pointing toward. What this means for the reader of Revelation is significant. Jesus taught his disciples to read the cosmic sign language before John wrote Revelation. When the disciples asked him about the end of the age on the Mount of Olives, Matthew 24:3, he did not tell them to watch for literal astronomical disasters. He told them to watch for the prophetic grammar that the great prophets had used to describe the fall of specific empires. The disciples who had sat under his teaching on the Mount of Olives would have recognized the sixth seal immediately. This is the grammar Jesus taught us. The completion of the age John describes is the event Jesus was preparing them to identify. Why does this matter? Because the most common response to the cosmic signs of the sixth seal is to treat them as literal astronomical prediction, to wait for a specific eclipse, or for stars to literally fall from the sky. But the prophetic tradition John is drawing from tells us these signs describe something more fundamental, the dissolution of the order that makes human civilization possible. The sun going dark means what gave light to human endeavor no longer operates on human terms. The sky rolling up means the framework of this age is being concluded. The mountains moving means every seat of power is displaced. The sixth seal is the announcement that the organizing principle of this world has reached its end. If this kind of deep reading of Scripture is connecting things in your mind that you have never seen connected before, take a moment and hit that like button. It tells me this work is finding the people it is meant for. Because the part that changes everything about this series is still ahead, and then John sees the people, Revelation 6:15, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every slave, and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains. 7 categories. In Revelation, 7 is the number of completion, and John's 7 categories here are deliberate. This is not a partial list of the people affected by the sixth seal. It is a complete list. Every human being in every position on the social spectrum is included. The Greek terms reveal the scope. Vasileis tes Ges, the kings of the earth. Megistanes, the great men. The nobles, those of highest social rank below royalty. Heliarchy, military commanders, literally commanders of 1,000 soldiers, the men who hold the chain of command. Plusii, the rich, those whose wealth gives them influence and options. Ischiri, the powerful, those whose strength and force command respect. And then, pas doulos, every slave. Pas eleftheros, every free person. The list runs from the apex of political power to the base of the social order, and it ends by placing those who owned and those who were owned in the same category, in the same location, under the same rock. The pair at the end of the list is the theological hinge. Pas doulos is every slave. In Roman law, a slave was not a person. Slavery in the ancient world was ontological, not merely economic. A slave had no legal standing, could not own property, could not testify in court, could not enter into contracts. The law recognized a slave as a res, a thing, not a homo, a human. Next to every slave, patos eleftheros, every free person. The person who owned the slave and the person who was owned stand in the same position, in the same location, asking for the same burial. The legal and ontological distinction that defined ancient civilization has been erased in a single verse. The Roman social hierarchy in the 1st century was precise and rigid. Senators, equestrian order, free citizens, freedmen, slaves. Every person knew their position and behaved accordingly. The legal, economic, and social distance between a king and a slave was not merely large, it was absolute. They did not share locations. They did not receive the same treatment under any system of law, economy, or social custom. The 6th seal places them side by side under the same rocks of the same mountains. The equalization is not incidental, it is the point. The 6th seal does not merely describe cosmic chaos, it describes the complete dissolution of every hierarchy by which human civilization organized and justified itself. The 6th seal creates 2 equalizations, and only one of them is often noticed. The first equalization is under the rocks, kings and slaves together in the same cave. The second equalization is before the throne, the great multitude in Revelation 7 standing with palm branches, every nation, tribe, people and language together in the same white robes. Both groups are equalized. But the direction of the equalization is opposite. Under the rocks, the kings were brought down to the level of the slaves by what failed. Before the throne, every nation was brought up to the same standing by what was applied. The 6th seal shows what all human hierarchy dissolves into. Chapter 7 shows what the Lamb's blood elevates everyone into. This is what the 6th seal is actually delivering. The cosmic signs announce the dissolution, and the list shows what has been dissolved. Not only the physical creation framework, every constructed framework, every social, economic, military, political structure that human beings built on top of the physical creation. Kings who had armies, generals who commanded those armies, the wealthy who funded both, the powerful who leveraged all three, slaves who had no stake in any of it, all of them under the same rock, all of them saying the same words, all of them afraid of the same thing. The equalization is total. What they ask for is specific and telling. Revelation 6:16, and they said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. They do not ask to be saved. They do not ask for mercy. They ask for burial. They prefer to be crushed under the weight of the mountains that just moved, rather than remain visible to the one on the throne. The most powerful people on earth, the ones with the deepest resources, the most sophisticated systems of self-protection, the greatest capacity to manage threat, when all of those systems fail, choose death over exposure. That is the theology of what they built. Everything they had was designed to avoid the face of God, not to face it. Set against this is the prayer from Seal 5. The martyrs under the altar had nothing. No armies, no wealth, no mountains, no bunkers. They had been killed for their testimony. Their prayer was not for burial. It was for vindication. How long, holy and true, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood? That prayer came from a position of complete social and material powerlessness. The prayer from Seal 6 comes from complete social and material power. The martyrs asked God to act on their behalf. The kings asked the creation to act on God's behalf, to hide them from him. 2 prayers in 2 seals. Only one of them is in the censer. The word John uses for the wrath they flee is orge. The distinction between themos, the passionate and explosive anger of the moment, and orge, the settled deep indignation of one who has weighed a situation and arrived at a position, is precise in Greek. What the kings and the slaves and the generals flee is not God losing control. It is orgy, the measured, considered response of the one who opened every seal, who held every bowl of prayer, who gave every rider his authority, and the orgy of the Lamb is specifically named alongside the orgy of the Father, the Lamb who was slaughtered to provide the alternative that the people hiding under rocks have rejected. If you want to go deeper into what Revelation reveals about the times we are living through and what it means for your life right now, check the first pinned comment below this video. There is something there that will help you continue this journey with the depth it deserves. The question ends, chapter 6, Revelation 6:17. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Who is able to stand? The kings cannot stand. The generals cannot stand. The wealthy cannot stand. The slaves cannot stand. The free cannot stand. The question is asked by the people hiding under the rocks, and they already know the implied answer from their own position. No one. But the text does not answer the question in chapter 6. John opens chapter 7 before he opens the seventh seal. The answer is given to John before the next wave of judgment arrives. And the gap between the question and the answer is deliberate. The reader is meant to sit with who is able to stand as a question asked of them personally. The question in Revelation 6:17 arrives with prophetic precedent. Joel 2:11, the day of the Lord is great, it is dreadful. Who can endure it? Malachi 3:2, but who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire or a launderer's soap. Both prophets asked the same question, and both followed it with an answer. Joel's answer was corporate repentance and the outpouring of the Spirit. Malachi's answer was purification, the Levitical priests refined and cleansed. In neither prophetic tradition does the question exist without an answer. Revelation 6:17 is asking it in the same tradition. The answer is always in the next chapter. The tradition always provides one. Before the seventh seal breaks, something happens. Revelation 7:1-3. 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds, not releasing them, holding them. The destructive forces are paused, because there is a group that must be sealed before anything else proceeds. The 6th seal's conditions are suspended long enough for something to be done to specific people that cannot be undone once the winds are released. The sealing happens before the chaos of the next wave, not during it, not after it. God interrupts the sequence to mark his people first. The sealed 144,000, drawn from the 12 tribes of Israel, has generated enormous theological debate about whether the number is literal, whether the tribes are ethnic Israel or the church, whether the tribal list matches the genealogical record. But regardless of the interpretive tradition, the function of the sealing is clear. There is a people who are identified and marked before the judgment winds are released. The 6th seal asked, who is able to stand? And chapter 7 immediately shows us the sealed. They are not standing because of what they built. They are standing because of what was placed on them. The tribal list in Revelation 7 contains a variation that most readers pass over without realizing its significance. In Numbers 1, the standard Old Testament tribal census begins with Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, the first son, the head of the genealogical list. In Revelation 7, the list begins with Judah. The reordering is not an error. Judah is the tribe of the lion, the same lion referenced in Revelation 5:5 as the one who prevailed to open the scroll. Judah is the tribe of David, the tribe of the Messiah, and Dan, one of the original 12, is absent from Revelation 7's list entirely, replaced by Manasseh. The sealed are not arranged by birth order. They are arranged by the Lamb. After the 144,000, John sees a second group, Revelation 7:9, a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. White robes, the same white robes the martyrs under the altar received from God in Seal 5. Palm branches. In the ancient tradition of Israel, the palm branch was the instrument of celebration and victory, the symbol used to receive a king entering in triumph. The great multitude in Revelation 7 is standing and celebrating, not hiding, not crushed, not asking for burial, standing. Revelation 7:14 provides the answer to how they got there. These are they who have come out of the great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. White made white by blood. The sixth seal's hierarchy dissolved between those who built bunkers and those who did not. Chapter 7's hierarchy is different. It is the distinction between those who tried to protect their position through the structures of this age and those who brought their robes to the Lamb's blood. The structures dissolved under the sixth seal. The blood of the Lamb does not dissolve under any seal. Revelation 7:15-17 gives the great multitude a promise specific enough to answer every condition the sixth seal described. Never again will they hunger, never again will they thirst. The sun will not beat down on them, nor any scorching heat. The sun that terrified the kings, the sun that went dark to signal the dissolution of the world order, will not touch those who stand before the throne in white robes. The God who wipes every tear from their eyes is the same God who sealed them before the winds were released, who positioned the martyrs under the altar, who holds the censer. The specific promises of Revelation 7 are the specific refutation of the sixth seal's terrors, applied not to those who avoided the tribulation, but to those who came through it. The answer to who is able to stand is not a category of human power. It is not the strongest empire, not the most heavily armed military, not the deepest bunker, not the most liquid wealth. It is the sealed. It is those clothed in white, because the Lamb's blood was applied to them. It is the great multitude who came out of the great tribulation, having held something more durable than any structure the sixth seal dissolved. The answer to the king's question was already standing before the throne while they were asking it under rocks. The palm branches of Revelation 7:9 connect to a specific moment in the New Testament, John 12:13, when crowds waved palm branches as Jesus entered Jerusalem. In that first procession, the crowd cried, "Hosanna," a Hebrew word from Psalm 118 meaning "save now." The crowd with palm branches in John 12 was asking for salvation. The crowd with palm branches in Revelation 7 has received it. The same gesture of hope becomes the gesture of fulfillment. What was waved in expectation at the triumphal entry is waved in completion before the throne. The great multitude is not performing a ritual they do not understand. They are completing a gesture the disciples began at the gates of Jerusalem. Now the Lamb opens the seventh seal. Revelation 8:1, and when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. The entire series has moved through sound. The throne room in Revelation 4 and 5 was full of sound, living creatures crying, "Holy, holy, holy," 24 elders casting crowns, thousands of thousands singing. The martyrs cried out in Seal 5. The cosmic collapse of Seal 6 produced earthquakes and falling mountains, and the voices of every social category calling for burial. And then the seventh seal opens, and heaven stops. The word John uses is sigi, sige, not the ordinary word for quiet. Sigi is the word for a charged, deliberate hush, the specific silence that falls when something significant is about to happen, and the appropriate response is complete stillness. In Acts 21:40, when Paul raised his hand before a hostile crowd and sigi fell, it was the silence of a crowd that has been stopped in its tracks. In Acts 12:17, when Peter described his release from prison and the gathered believers fell into Sige, it was the stillness of people receiving news too large to respond to immediately. Sige in Revelation 8:1 is not the silence of absence. It is the silence of presence, the hush that precedes something definitive. Half an hour imiron. This is the only specific time duration given in any of the 7 seals. The first seal has no duration. The second has no duration. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth, no duration. The 7th seal is given exactly half an hour. And that specific number, in the first-century world in which John and his readers lived, had a precise and well-known referent that would have been immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with the daily rhythm of the Jerusalem temple. Twice daily in the Jerusalem temple, a priest entered the inner chamber, the sanctuary, to offer incense on the golden altar before the Lord. This was one of the most sacred acts of the daily worship. The people assembled outside and prayed during the offering. The priest inside performed the ritual in complete silence. Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist, was serving at the altar of incense when the angel Gabriel appeared to him. Luke 1:8-11. When his time of service came, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the hour for the burning of incense came, all the assembled worshippers were praying outside, priest inside, silence. The incense offering took approximately half an hour. John's first readers, Jewish believers, many of whom had worshipped at or near the Jerusalem temple, all of whom knew the daily rhythm of the temple's sacred schedule, would have identified Imiron of Sige immediately. Half an hour of charged silence in heaven is not an arbitrary duration. It is the language of the incense offering. Heaven stops because a ritual is being performed. Something is being brought to the altar. Something is being offered before the throne in the same way the incense was offered in the holy place, in silence, in solemnity, with complete attention. Revelation 8:3-4. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. The golden censer, incense offered with meta, the prayers of all the saints. Together, the incense and the prayers rise before the throne as a single combined offering. This is not a procedural description. This is the theology of the silence. The half hour of Sige exists because the most sacred offering of the entire sequence is being made. The prayers of every saint, every believer across every century, whoever prayed into what felt like silence, are being brought before the throne. In Revelation 5, the 4 living creatures and 24 elders held golden bowls full of incense, and the text identifies those bowls as the prayers of the saints. Those bowls have been held before the throne from the moment the Lamb took the scroll. Every prayer that was prayed in that entire series, the prayers of people living under the conditions of seals 1-6, the prayers of the martyrs crying, "How long?" under the altar, the prayers of the sealed, the prayers of those who had not yet seen any visible response, all of it was held in the bowls. And now, at the moment of the 7th seal, it is offered, all at once, with the incense, in half an hour of Sige. The Leviticus 16 connection gives the censer its deepest background. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest entered the Holy of Holies with a golden censer full of burning coals and 2 handfuls of finely ground sweet incense. He placed the incense on the fire, and the cloud of incense covered the mercy seat, the kaparet, over the Ark of the Covenant. The cloud was not decorative. It was the veil between the priest and the immediate presence of God. The censer in Revelation 8 performs the same function at the scale of creation. The incense cloud carries the prayers before the throne. The mercy seat, Elasterion, the same term Paul uses for Christ in Romans 3:25, is what the prayers approach. The unanswered prayer is not the unheard prayer. The theology of the censer makes that distinction precisely. What felt like silence from the human end was not silence on the divine end. The prayer that launched itself into what felt like an empty room did not dissolve. It entered the bowl. It was held. It was combined with all the other prayers being held in all the other bowls. And the moment of the seventh seal is the moment when the combined weight of all of it is offered together before the throne. Prayer in the economy of Revelation is not individual and transactional. It is cumulative and liturgical. The word Matah in Revelation 8:4 carries weight. The smoke of the incense went up Matah, together with the prayers of the saints, not separately, not alongside as two distinct streams, together as a combined single offering. The incense was added to the prayers, not the prayers to the incense. The content was always the prayers. The incense was what made them fragrant, what shaped raw petition into something that could rise before the throne as acceptable offering. What you prayed in grief and groaning was the substance. The Spirit shaped it into fragrance. What enters the censer is not your polished and articulate prayer alone. It is everything you carried before God, including what you could not put into words. Revelation 8:5. And the angel took the censer, and filled it with fire of the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings, and an earthquake. The same censer that held the incense and the prayers. The angel fills it with fire from the altar and throws it down. What went up as prayer comes back as fire. The thunderings and lightnings and earthquake that follow the fire landing are not separate from the prayers. They are the prayers. The fire thrown from the golden censer is the precise, accumulated total response to every prayer that ever asked for justice, for the kingdom to come, for God to act, for how long to receive an answer. The judgment is not blind. It is the aggregate answer to the aggregate prayer. Zechariah chapter 1 verses 11 through 14 provide the prophetic precedent. The prophet sees a man on a red horse among the myrtle trees, and behind him red, sorrel, and white horses. The angel asks, "How long, Lord Almighty, will you withhold mercy from Jerusalem?" The answer comes, "I am very jealous for Jerusalem and Zion." And what preceded the vision? Zechariah 1:11. The whole world is at rest and in peace. The earth was Sige before the announcement of restoration. Silence before the answer. The pattern is ancient. God does not answer how long in the middle of the noise. The answer comes after the Sige. The scope of what fills the censer is not limited to the saints, alive at any one moment. Revelation 5:8 shows the 4 living creatures and 24 elders already holding golden bowls of incense when the Lamb takes the scroll. Those bowls were receiving contributions as the seals opened one by one, the prayers of believers living under Seal 1's ideological conquest, the prayers of those caught in Seal 2's violence, the prayers of families under Seal 3's economic famine, the prayers of those dying under Seal 4's authority, the prayers of the martyrs from Seal 5. How long? The very first prayer we hear spoken aloud in the seal sequence. Every prayer from every seal, all of it collected, all of it offered together in the Sige of Seal 7. Nothing from any seal is missing from the censer. 7 angels appear in Revelation 8:2 standing before God, and 7 trumpets are given to them. They are standing, ready, but they do not move. They do not raise the trumpets. Nothing happens until the censer ritual is complete, until the incense and the prayers have risen and the fire has been thrown to earth. The 7 angels with the 7 trumpets wait through the entire half-hour of Sige. The trumpets, which will produce the next wave of Revelation's judgment sequence, will not sound until the prayers have been offered. The judgment that follows is sequentially dependent on the prayers that precede it. This is the architecture of what comes next. The dependency of the trumpets on the censer is architecturally significant. The 7 angels with the 7 trumpets are present in Revelation 8:2 before the censer ritual begins. They are not sent to retrieve the trumpets after the ritual concludes. They are already there, already holding the instruments that will produce the next wave of what Revelation describes. And they wait. They wait through the entire Sigi. They wait while the incense and the prayers rise. They wait while the fire is gathered into the censer. They wait until the censer is thrown to earth. The judgment sequence of the trumpets cannot begin until the prayer sequence is completed. The prayers are not the background music to the trumpets. The prayers are the reason for the trumpets. Inside the 7th seal are the 7 trumpets, and what the trumpets release makes the 6 seals look like a prologue. The riders covered a quarter of the earth. The trumpets will cover a third of the sea, a third of the earth's vegetation, a third of the waters, event after event that exceeds the scale of the seals in specificity and in consequence. What John writes beginning in Revelation 8:6, when the first angel raises his trumpet, is the answer that the 7th seal's censer was collecting. The 7th seal does not contain destruction. It contains everything that comes next, every trumpet, every bowl that follows the trumpets. All of it held inside this one seal that opened to 30 minutes of silence. The kings who chose burial over standing made the same theological decision that human civilization has made consistently. Build structures that keep you from having to confront the face of God. The bunker is the most literal expression of that theology. But the mountains that made the bunker location stable are the same mountains the 6th seal moved. The creation that provided the material for every defense is the same creation described by the rolling sky and the shaking earth. There is no structure built from this age that the conclusion of this age cannot reach. The bunker is made of what the earthquake disturbs. The great multitude of Revelation 7 was not under a rock. They were standing before the throne in white robes, holding palm branches. They are the answer to the question the kings asked: who is able to stand? And they are standing not because they found a better physical location. They are standing because they carry something that the 6th seal cannot reach, the seal of God, placed by the one who opens the seals, held in place by the blood of the Lamb. You cannot outlast this age by building inside it. You can only outlast it by belonging to the one who ends it. Ephesians 1 verses 13 and 14. You were sealed with the promised Holy Spirit, who is a deposit guaranteeing our inheritance until the redemption of those who are God's possession. Sealed. The same sealing that Revelation 7 describes, not placed by the sealed person's effort or by their social category, not by wealth, not by position, not by whether they were slave or free, placed by the one who owns the scroll on those who belong to him. The Spirit placed as a deposit, not the full inheritance, but the guarantee of it. The seal that identifies the great multitude standing in white robes is available now, not in Revelation 7, now. The censer theology transforms how you pray. If every prayer offered in faith is held in the golden bowl, if the combined weight of all the prayers of all the saints across all of history is what fills the censer before the fire is thrown, then prayer is not a report sent to an unresponsive office. It is not a lottery ticket that either wins or loses on the day of its submission. It is contribution to an accumulation that has a specific moment of total release. What goes into the censer is not lost. What rises as incense before the throne comes back as fire to earth. The timing of the fire belongs to the one holding the censer, not to the one who prayed the prayer. The Spirit's role in Romans 8:26-27 is the incense for prayers that have no words. The passage says the Spirit intercedes with alaliti stenermi, wordless groanings, literally beyond the capacity of speech to contain. not unexpressed prayers, prayers that are too large or too broken or too unresolved to fit into sentences. The Spirit takes that and shapes it into intercession before the Father according to the will of God. Not into a polished version of your petition, into something that fits the presence before the throne. Every wordless groaning of every believer across every century is in the censer along with the stated petitions. The censer in Revelation 8 is large enough for all of it, including what you could never quite say out loud. Romans 8 verses 26 and 27. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with the will of God. The Holy Spirit is contributing to the censer, the prayers that you could not put into language, the ones that came out as groaning, as grief too structured for words, as silence from the human side that was anything but silence on the divine side. The Spirit turned those into intercession that went before the throne. Every prayer, including the ones you did not know how to pray, including the ones that felt like they never left the room, they are in the censer. The great multitude came out of the great tribulation, not around it, out of it, ectis thlipseos tis megalis. Through it, the white robes were not given to those who escaped suffering by finding the right theological position. They were given to those who came through suffering with the word of God and their testimony intact, who washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb while living inside conditions that the 6 seals described. The answer to who is able to stand is not who avoided the 6th seal's conditions. It is who belongs to the Lamb while living inside them. In the time of Revelation's writing, wealthy families who anticipated the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD had options. They could flee to estates in the countryside, buy passage to Egypt, secure grain stores and water supplies behind fortified walls. The parallel in the 6th seal is exact. The kings and the powerful hid themselves. The bunker is the ultimate expression of trust in what you built and owned. The great multitude's white robes were not built or owned. They were given, washed in blood that was not their own. The distinction between the hidden kings and the standing multitude is not a difference of strategy or location. It is a difference of origin. What you build from the materials of this age will be addressed by the conclusion of this age. What is given by the Lamb belongs to the Lamb. Revelation 7 verses 15 through 17 closes with promises specific enough to map onto every experience in this series. Never again hunger, the famine of the 3rd seal. Never again thirst, the scarcity the black horse produced. The sun will not beat down. The same sun that darkened to signal the dissolution of the world order will be no threat to those who stand before the throne. The God who wipes every tear from their eyes in Revelation 21:4 is the same God who received the martyrs under the altar in Seal 5, who holds the prayers in the golden bowls, who sealed those who belonged to him before the winds were released. The specific conditions of the seals have specific answers in what God has prepared. The never-again language of Revelation 7:15-17 is not generic reassurance. It is point-for-point refutation of what the seals produced. Never again will they hunger. The hunger of the 3rd seal, where a day's wages bought a single meal. Never again will they thirst. The scarcity the black horse produced at every level. The sun will not beat down on them. The same sun that went dark to signal the dissolution of the world order will be directed to protect those who stand before the throne. The God who wipes every tear from their eyes in Revelation 21:4 is the same God who received the martyrs under the altar, who sealed those who belonged to him before the winds were released. Every condition the sealed lived through inside the seals has a corresponding answer in what was prepared for them. You are living inside the accumulation right now. The prayers you have prayed, the ones that felt like they reached a ceiling, the ones that felt like they dissolved without landing, the ones you stopped praying because the silence lasted longer than you could hold the expectation. Those prayers did not cease to exist when you stopped verbalizing them. The half hour of Sigi in Revelation 8:1 is not the silence of God's absence from your situation. It is the silence of a censer that is being filled. The incense offering is in progress, the prayers are rising, and the fire that answers them will be as specific and total as the accumulation that produced it. The present tense is where the theology of the censer operates. Ephesians 1:13-14 does not say you will be sealed, it says you were sealed, esphragisthete, aorist passive, completed action. The seal is placed. Romans 8:26-27 does not say the Spirit will intercede. It says the Spirit intercedes, present active, now, continuously, in the current moment. The censer is receiving contributions now. What you prayed last week entered the censer. What you prayed this morning entered the censer. The question of whether your prayer landed is answered by the grammar. The Spirit intercedes, present active, without ceasing. The half hour of Sigi John heard is the culmination of what has been accumulating throughout the entire age. Your prayer this week is part of that accumulation. The seventh seal does not end the story. It opens it at a new level. Inside the seventh seal are 7 trumpets, 7 angels standing before God with instruments that will produce the second wave of what Revelation describes. What the trumpets release makes the seals look like a prologue, a quarter of the earth under seal 4, but a third of the sea under trumpet 2, a third of the rivers under trumpet 3, the sun and moon and stars struck again under trumpet 4. The silence of Revelation 8:1 was the intermission. The trumpets are the continuation of an answer that the seventh seal's censer was assembling. And everything that comes after, every trumpet, every bowl, every announcement that leads to Revelation 19 is the fire from the golden censer landing in its full and final form. Leave a comment below with this declaration. God's word does not fail. Write it right now. Because whatever your version of how long sounds like, whatever you have prayed into what felt like silence, whatever you are carrying that has not yet resolved, the seventh seal shows you the architecture of where it goes, into the censer, rising with the incense, before the throne, and the fire that answers every prayer that has ever reached the golden bowl is already being prepared. The seventh seal does not contain destruction. It contains everything that comes next. Inside it are 7 trumpets, and what the trumpets release makes the seals look like the beginning.